An 18-year-old student traveled home during the semester break but disappeared without a trace shortly thereafter. Her mother subsequently received strange messages, which prompted her to contact the police. The results of the investigation shocked the entire family, and no one was prepared for this truth. Angelica Hudson was born on the 9th of August, 1996, in a quiet suburb of Norfolk. Shortly after her birth, the family was expanded by 2 younger sisters. But by 2005, her parents separated, and all daughters remained with the mother. 5 years later, her mother remarried, and Angelica got another younger sister. Thus, she had 3 younger sisters, and she cared for each of them lovingly and attentively. After completing school in her hometown, Angelica went to Fars University, which lies about 3 hours' drive from her home. She was active in 2 university sports teams and planned to accelerate her studies to graduate a year earlier than usual. Despite her full schedule, she always found time to return to Norfolk and spend time with her family by visiting her parents and sisters. In March 2015, when Angelica turned 18 years old, she decided to spend the spring break at her parents' house. For several days, she enjoyed the time with her family and was delighted with the warm atmosphere at home. On the morning of the 2nd of March, her mother devoted herself to her usual morning tasks, prepared the younger daughters for school and went to work, leaving Angelica alone at home. When the mother returned from work, Angelica was suddenly no longer there. Everything looked as if she had left in a hurry. The back door was not closed, her favorite music could be heard in the speakers, and her personal belongings were partially and hastily packed. This seemed strange to her mother, as they normally shared their plans with each other. On this day, however, not a single message came from Angelica, which gave cause for concern. Angelica's mother decided to write to her daughter herself to find out where she was staying. Angelica replied that she was out with friends, but did not provide any details about the location or return time. During the message exchange, the mother noticed that Angelica's writing style had changed. Normally, Angelica wrote with enthusiasm and attention to detail, but this time her responses were short and unclear. This did not worry the mother, however, as Angelica was 18 years old and she assumed that her daughter simply wanted some freedom. On this day, Angelica did not return home and continued to respond to messages but gave no clear information about her whereabouts or return plans. On the evening of the 3rd of March, Angelica's mother became worried because her daughter was not responding to calls. She tried to reach the girl's friends, but they too could not make contact and did not know where she was. The worries grew, and the mother contacted the police. The investigators initially assumed that Angelica might have left voluntarily because an unusual note was found in her room. It stated that she needed time to be alone with her thoughts. This note confused the family, as Angelica was always full of energy, devoted herself to learning, and made big plans for her future. Angelica rarely complained about serious problems in her life. Therefore, the unexpected note that she left behind was connected with many questions. All her personal belongings remained at home: clothing, wallet, and car. This contradicted the assumption that she might have left voluntarily, but there was no evidence that could have proven anything else. The turning point in the investigation came several days after her disappearance. Her neighbor Cody, who lives nearby, found a fragment of Angelica's credit card near his house. After informing the police about this, he was made the main suspect. Investigators suspected that he might have something to do with her disappearance and interrogated him for over 12 hours. In this investigation, Cody stubbornly denied any connection to the disappearance, but the police were not ready to exclude him from suspicions, and Angelica's relatives were convinced of his involvement. As the news spread in the area, many residents joined the search and formed groups to search the surroundings for traces. The situation became more complicated when it became known that Cody and Angelica had once attended the same school and had even dated each other. This intensified the suspicions, and soon after an incident occurred that further confirmed these assumptions. Less than a week after the search began, Wesley Hudson, Angelica's stepfather, unexpectedly went to Cody's house and found Angelica's outer clothing there. He immediately called his daughter's friends, assuming that there might be more of her belongings in the house. His actions intensified the suspicions of many who believed that Cody might be involved in Angelica's disappearance. When the friends came to Cody's house, they discovered a jacket there that immediately gave cause to call the police. The investigators took him for interrogation again and asked him careful questions that were aimed at gaining more clarity. Cody insisted that he had no idea how the jacket had gotten into his house, which further troubled the investigators. The presence of the jacket was a crucial clue, but his convincing argument made the police believe that he was not lying. He offered to voluntarily provide DNA samples and take the lie detector test to show his willingness to cooperate. Furthermore, Cody presented an alibi for the time of the disappearance, which after verification was confirmed as credible. The investigators decided to speak with Cody's friends who had found the jacket, and learned from them that the girl's stepfather had given them the tip. The collected information led the investigators to suspect that the jacket might have been deliberately placed. There was always the question of what drives Wesley. There were assumptions that he might possibly be connected to the disappearance of the woman to whom he had a relationship. In the investigations, the police examined his past thoroughly and determined that Wesley had been charged multiple times for various offenses, more than 10 times. Many of the charges could not be proven, but he was frequently arrested for minor thefts and illegal possession of certain substances. In the year 2005, it was determined that he allegedly had deprived his wife of her freedom for several days. But there was no clear evidence of his guilt, and he received no severe punishment. In his life, Wesley was repeatedly in prison, and his entire time there was measured in years. After the investigators had studied the materials of the case, they found that some weeks before Angelica's disappearance, her mother had thrown Wesley out of the house because of his obsession with various substances. Since then, he had been living in a hotel. All these circumstances made him a serious suspect. During questioning, the man explained that he had nothing to do with his daughter's disappearance, and on the contrary, had done everything to find her. He was asked when he had last seen Angelica. Wesley told that he had seen her on the day of her disappearance around noon at the gas station. Wesley informed his colleagues that he had to leave work for a few hours to help his daughter with financial matters. He returned around the middle of the day and seemed agitated. On this day, the investigators checked the recordings from the gas station cameras where Wesley allegedly was seen, but his statements could not be confirmed. He said he had met Angelica by chance at the gas station when he was driving by. This statement raised questions, since Angelica's car was parked at home and it was unclear why she would go to the gas station. Wesley also explained his absence from work with the necessity to check his house alarm system after receiving a notification on his phone, but the police could not confirm this. These details contradicted his story. The colleagues confirmed that Wesley had indeed left his workplace to meet with his daughter, who asked him for a few $100s. After their meeting, they went separate ways. But the discrepancies in his explanations and the lack of evidence for the meeting at the gas station left many questions with the investigators. After the police had obtained a search warrant, they entered the hotel room where Wesley had been living in the recent weeks. Inside, they found some unexpected things. For example, he kept firearms and much ammunition. Because of his history, he was legally prohibited from possessing weapons, which is why he was arrested. However, no traces were found in the room that were connected with his daughter Angelica's disappearance. Finally, Wesley was charged with illegal weapon possession, unauthorized intrusion, and obstruction of evidence. Despite the accusations, Wesley continued to emphasize that he was not guilty of Angelica's disappearance and continued to actively search for her. Finally, the court sentenced him to 20 years in prison. In the meantime, the investigators continued the search for the missing young woman. Wesley's vehicle was confiscated for examination, and a shovel, adhesive tape, and dark gloves were found. The navigation system installed in the vehicle aroused particular interest and was sent to specialists for thorough examination. The investigators analyzed the data to trace Wesley's route in the days after Angelica's disappearance. It turned out that he drove to a city on the 4th of March that lies 90 kilometers from Norfolk. His vehicle stood for 20 minutes in a street before Wesley returned to work. On the 9th of April, the investigators visited this location and discovered that the vehicle had been parked at an abandoned building in a remote area. When examining the surroundings, they noticed an object in a ditch near the house. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a piece of plywood that was covering something important. This location, overgrown with dense vegetation and difficult to access, attracted no random passers-by. After a thorough investigation, they found under the plywood what they were looking for, unfortunately the missing person. What was found was sent for examination, and soon after the investigators received unexpected data that became the decisive turning point in the case. Blood tests unexpectedly revealed that Angelica had 3 times more of certain substances in her body than is considered safe. Her family was shocked because Angelica always led a healthy lifestyle, did sports, and focused on her education. Nobody thought that she had come into contact with these substances. The medical experts insisted on further examinations and decided to analyze her hair to determine whether she had previously come into contact with these substances. The analysis showed that Angelica had never come into contact with them before. This made it unlikely that she had voluntarily taken such a large amount. Furthermore, the location where Angelica was found aroused suspicion. Someone had hidden her in a remote spot and covered her with building material to make it look like an accident. The police questioned Wesley again, who was already in custody. First, they asked him how his service car could have ended up near the house where Angelica was found. Wesley's answers aroused doubts among the investigators. He claimed someone could have used his car without his knowledge, although he had previously said that nobody except him had access to the vehicle. Wesley speculated that someone could take the navigation device from his car, drive to the mentioned house, and bring the device back. At the same time, the police analyzed the recordings from street cameras on the route to this house. They were able to secure several images that confirmed that Wesley was indeed in the city with his service car on that day. Although all evidence suggested that the man was involved in the crime, the court needed additional evidence to charge him. The investigators worked on the case for several years, determined to find specific evidence. Finally, Wesley was accused of the crime against Angelica at the end of 2018. The court trial began in January 2022. According to the indictment, Wesley came to the house where Angelica lived on the afternoon of the 2nd of March to kidnap her. According to the investigation, he took her with him and then tried to present it as an accident by administering an overdose of dangerous substances to her. During numerous interrogations, the investigators noticed how carefully the man formulated his answers to avoid any suspicion. In the court proceedings, the prosecution presented witness statements that supported their version of the incident. They accused a man of having sold a substance that led to the tragedy with Angelica. During the investigations, the police found Angelica's mobile phone on the street. The location data of her device was synchronized with the information from Wesley's phone. Since her disappearance, both phones were registered at the same locations, including the times when messages were sent in Angelica's name to her mother. This indicated that Wesley had taken the girl's phone and had tried to make her mother believe that everything was fine with her daughter. The defenders of the accused insisted on his innocence and argued that Angelica might have disappeared voluntarily due to her depression, and Wesley had nothing to do with it. But this version did not explain why Wesley's car was near the place where later the sought object, covered with a plywood board, was found. All the arguments presented tried to explain the incident as coincidence or as an attempt to slander Wesley. He had repeatedly explained that he does not believe in mere coincidence and is convinced that it is a crime. In court, however, he suddenly changed his opinion. The jury needed less than 1 hour to reach a verdict. Wesley was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. He announced that he would appeal the verdict and theoretically has good chances for a review of the case because, as you understand, no direct evidence of his involvement was found. For example, no biological traces of him were discovered at the crime scene that could have served as an important argument for the prosecution. The main argument, however, was that Wesley's service car was seen near the crime scene. Other evidence presented was not so convincing. Wesley's past, however, raises questions, because 10 years ago he was already involved in a scandal with his wife, which also seems suspicious. And although the prosecution's arguments sound convincing, the absence of more conclusive evidence may enable the defense to obtain a review of the verdict and a new trial. In these recordings, a woman is shown whose actions the next day will shake society and cause shock throughout the entire country. On Tuesday evening, the 25th of April 2023, Michael Fantinelli returned home to Louisiana, where he lived together with Hannah Linden, his 45-year-old life partner, and 2 daughters from a previous marriage. 6-year-old Bella and her older sister. The day had been particularly challenging for Michael, and he felt exhausted. Therefore, he went to bed immediately after his return without finding Hannah beside him. Assuming that she might be somewhere nearby, Michael hoped to see her return, but fatigue overwhelmed him, and he fell asleep. In the morning, when the alarm clock rang at 7 o'clock, Michael woke up and decided first to check on the daughters before going to work. In the room, he found the older daughter sleeping peacefully in her bed, but younger Bella's place was empty. Her bed was carefully made, as if the girl had not prepared at all to sleep in it. Michael tried to push aside the worrying thoughts, assuming that Bella might have been picked up by her mother, Jennifer Zeladine, who lived nearby. Since their divorce, the custody disputes over the children were sometimes so intense that the police had to intervene, which intensified the tensions between the former spouses. Michael Fantinelli was very concerned about the absence of Hannah Linden, his life partner, and Bella, their youngest daughter. He could not explain where they might have disappeared to during his absence. Normally, Hannah always informed him about her plans and never left the children unsupervised. That Hannah was not at his side in the morning when he woke up, although she usually got up later than he did, confused him. After he had searched the house and did not find Hannah, Michael suspected that she might have gone to her mother, although he did not like this thought. Michael knew Hannah well and was certain of her loyalty to him and his daughters. Hannah, who had no children herself, loved and cared for Michael's daughters as if they were her own. The relationship between them was truly familial. The absence of Hannah and Bella, as well as Hannah's switched-off phone, caused Michael serious concern. His attempts to contact the ex-wife remained unsuccessful. His concern grew and he hurried to the police station to report the absence. The next morning, police officers came to the house where Michael and Hannah lived. They examined the house thoroughly and spoke with both Michael and his older daughter. Unfortunately, no relevant information was found that could help with the search. Now, still confused and concerned, Michael hoped for the police's support in searching for Hannah and Bella and expected their prompt and safe return home. During a conversation at the police station, Michael shared information about the difficult relationships between Jennifer and Hannah, mentioning that they had recently become particularly tense. These statements prompted the investigators to consider Jennifer Zeldin as a possible reason for Hannah's disappearance. The question about Bella's whereabouts arose. If she was with her biological mother, why had she not also taken her second daughter? In search of answers, the officers made their way to Jennifer's house on Field Drive number 19 and arrived there at 8:20 in the morning. The place seemed peaceful and quiet, without signs of any misunderstanding. However, as soon as the officers examined the premises, a cart with a large plastic bucket that had been carelessly left on the lawn in front of the house drew their attention. The interest in this bucket quickly led them to a shocking discovery. At the bottom of the bucket lay evidence of a legal violation. The investigative measures around Jennifer's house were immediately intensified. The suspected crime scene was cordoned off, and Hannah's disappearance entered the phase of criminal investigation. A further forensic examination promised to reveal more information about what had happened. Michael and Jennifer were deeply affected and grieved no less than the other. It was impossible to recover from what had happened. While the police were certain that Bella's parents could not be connected in any way to this unpleasant event, they suspected that the crime could only have been committed by someone who suffered from psychological problems and was probably known to the family. How else could he have known about their whereabouts? Later, the family described the event in interviews as an absurd-seeming act that fundamentally changed their lives. In honor of Bella's memory, her aunt, Bianca Cano, has created a page on a social network where she shares heartfelt posts about how Bella was during her lifetime and how her family will remember her. Bianca filled the page with the words, "The world has shown itself so harsh toward us. You were with us for only 6 magical years as a gift of your unique, tender soul. Your voice, your uniqueness, your ability to dance, your gentleness and fragility, your smile, your laughter, and your ability to express yourself. All of this will remain with us forever. Words cannot describe how wonderful this soul was." The residents of the place where the Fontanelle family lived always spoke of Bella as a cheerful and open girl. She was often seen playing in the yard with her sister or darting through the streets of the settlement on her bicycle. Bella was a student at St. Matthew's School. When the news about the incident with one of the students quickly spread through the town, the school administration decided to suspend classes until the end of the week so that students and parents could appropriately pay their respects. On the 29th of April 2023, a ceremony took place that attracted hundreds of participants, including 510 students with whom Bella had shared the school bench. Given the close connection between the residents of the small town, where everyone knew everyone, the farewell to the girl became a significant event. Fresh memories of Bella playing on the street collided with the sad necessity of saying goodbye. This event reminded everyone in the town that the perpetrator is still free and might be among them, continuing to do his everyday things on the same streets. During the time of active search actions and investigations, the investigators' attention turned to the person of Hannah Linden, Michael's life partner, who was suspected of possibly being involved in the case. Michael Fontanelle, who did not give up hope, believed that Hannah herself might need help. However, his assumptions proved to be wrong, as Hannah was found alive. She was in a hospital where she was subjected to a psychiatric examination. The events took an unexpected turn when, after midnight on the 26th of April, a disoriented woman without documents, who could not clearly explain what she wanted, approached the police department. Eventually, an ambulance was called and the woman was taken to the hospital. In exploring Hannah's personality, who was previously known as Bina Klin, the investigators discovered many questionable details. She loved Michael and his daughters sincerely, especially the younger one, Bella, whom she regarded as the ideal of a daughter, friendly, full of life, and open. However, Hannah harbored a dislike for the girl's mother, Michael's ex-wife. Although Jennifer did not interfere in her life with Michael and merely had the desire to see her daughters and participate in their lives, which is a completely natural need for any mother. In the year 2021, a serious disagreement occurred between Hannah and Jennifer, which reached its peak when Hannah decided to go to court to prevent Jennifer from approaching her. According to Lyndon, Jennifer repeatedly caused difficulties in connection with this disagreement. However, the courts found no sufficient basis to impose such restrictions and rejected her application. The lawsuit was based on two incidents. The first occurred on the 17th of March 2021 at a swimming competition in which Jennifer's younger daughter participated. When Jennifer came to support her, she saw how Hannah was hugging her daughter Bella. As she came closer, Jennifer tried to take the girl, but Hannah refused to give her to her, arguing that Bella could only see her mother on weekends. This incident deeply affected Jennifer. The second incident occurred on the 8th of June of the same year during a football game. In the police report filed by Hannah, it was stated that Jennifer had given cause for disagreements. But even in this case, the court saw no basis for a ban against Jennifer, and the case was closed. Thus, despite Hannah's efforts to enforce legal restrictions against Jennifer, both incidents did not lead to a change in their legal relationship to each other due to the lack of convincing evidence. Hannah Lyndon tried to appear innocent in the situation that had arisen, but her efforts were unsuccessful, and the subsequent police investigation only brought more clarity. It became clear to the investigator that Lyndon was hiding her true face. From the police reports, it emerged that Lyndon had been arrested sometime before the described events. On one day, Jennifer and her sister decided to visit Michael to arrange a meeting with the daughters. But at the door, they were greeted not by him, but by Hannah. Lyndon firmly refused Jennifer the meeting with the children and explained that she and Michael would work toward granting custody of the girls exclusively to Michael. These words deeply affected Jennifer. The situation could have escalated if Michael had not intervened, who calmed Jennifer by assuring her that she could still see her daughters, and even allowed their meeting. However, Hannah was dissatisfied with this turn of events. At the moment when Jennifer hugged her younger daughter, Lyndon unexpectedly pulled out a mobile phone and began filming. This action was noticed by Evelyn, who was outraged by Hannah's desire to capture such personal moments. She expressed her disapproval, but Hannah ignored her words. Evelyn's attempt to grab the phone prompted Lyndon to behave even more strangely. The episode that led to Evelyn filing a complaint with the police against Hannah left small misunderstandings in the form of small marks under the eye and on the arm of Evelyn, as was mentioned in the medical document. Hannah, however, refused to acknowledge any involvement in the event and insisted that Evelyn was the source of the event, although no marks were found on her. Michael could not provide the police with any valuable information and explained that he had not witnessed the event and therefore could not share any details of the events. After the event, Hannah received a summons to court, and shortly thereafter a serious incident occurred, with which Hannah was directly connected according to the investigator's view. His intuition proved to be correct when it became known that a video was recorded that shows on the 25th of April at 21:35, a woman in a red sweater and white shoes pushing a cart with a large bucket through the streets of the city on the way to Jennifer Zeldin's house. Passing cars caused her no slight irritation. She walked quickly and with a clear goal. In front of the house with number 19 on Sedgwick Drive, a cart with a bucket and its contents was found. The identification of the unknown woman who was captured on the video led to the determination of her identity as Hannah Lyndon, whom Michael described as a woman who loved his children very much and cared for them as if they were her own. Her fingerprints were found on the cart. After her arrest, Lyndon asked for the right to speak with a psychiatrist, which could indicate both deep guilt as well as an attempt to mitigate the possible sentence by recognizing the severity of the charges brought against her in light of Louisiana's legislation. For a first-degree crime, the strictest sanction is provided here. Currently, Hannah Linden is in Jefferson County Correctional Facility without possibility of bail under constant medical supervision. She is charged not only with a first-degree crime, but also with attempting to obstruct the course of justice. The investigation of the case is not yet completed, and it remains unclear what exactly motivated Linden to her deed. On the 1st of January 2003, at the threshold of the new year, something unexpected occurred. Evidence of the crime was found in a concrete drainage ditch. The girl was about 19 years old, and it soon turned out that it was Valerie Zavala Wilson from Fillmore, California. This discovery shocked the local community. Valerie Zavala Wilson was born on the 20th of August, 1983 in Santa Paula, California. She was the eldest child of Kevin and Michelle Zavala. Over time, she got younger sisters, Jessica and Christine, as well as a brother, Kevin. Several years after the birth of younger Kevin, the Zavala family moved to Fillmore. Valerie graduated from school with distinction and studied humanities at San Jose State University with the dream of becoming an elementary school teacher. During the winter holidays 2002, Valerie returned home to spend the holidays with her family. She spent evenings talking with her sister Jessica and her mother Michelle, and helped decorate the house for the celebrations. In preparation for the new year, she planned a meeting with friends at a party organized by her friend Dennis Retadou. Unfortunately, despite the usually low crime rate in Fillmore, this incident left local authorities and the community searching for answers. On New Year's Eve, the 31st of December 2002, Valerie attended a celebration as planned, but no one could suspect what would happen next. That night, Valerie was seen for the last time. On the morning of the 1st of January 2003, her mother noticed that her daughter had not returned home. After unsuccessful attempts to reach all acquaintances, the family contacted the Ventura County Police with a report of her disappearance. Although less than 24 hours had passed since their last meeting, Michelle was certain that something unusual had happened. On the same day, around 10 o'clock in the morning, another event occurred. A young man who wanted to take a shortcut home chose a narrow path. When a car drove by, he had to step aside and found evidence of the crime in a concrete drainage ditch, which apparently interested the police. He immediately informed the authorities. When the investigators arrived, their fears were confirmed. It turned out that it was Valerie Zavala. The circumstances under which Valerie was found were disturbing and suggested what she had experienced. The case was placed under the leadership of investigators Melissa Smith and Bill Ayub, as well as Police Chief Jose Rivera from the Ventura County Police. At the accident site, fresh and orderly traces were found, which led the investigators to suspect that the incident happened on New Year's Eve. This was confirmed by the well-groomed appearance of the girl. Clean nails and hair. The entire area was covered with traces of the incident. The outer clothing was in its place, but the underwear was missing. Additionally, cypress branches were found that were used for camouflage, which is strange since no cypresses grow in this area. Despite these attempts, the investigators were able to find some important evidence. With heavy news, the investigators made their way to Valerie's family, who had just filed their missing person report only hours earlier. This news was received with great sadness. Especially Michelle felt this. Immediately after finding the traces, the investigation began, and no time was wasted. When the emotional state of the Zavala family stabilized, information gathering began. The family reported that Valerie had left around 8:30 with her friend Anna and her cousin Robert to a New Year's celebration. This was the last time she was seen by her family. Around 1 o'clock in the morning of the 1st of January 2003, however, she called home and told her mother that she had driven her two friends home by car, who had overdone it with alcohol and would be back soon. Despite certain concern, Valerie's parents decided to go to sleep, believing that their daughter, in the company of friends, had simply forgotten the time and would return soon. Additionally, after questioning Valerie's father, Kevin, the investigators tried to find out if anyone could have wished the girl harm. Kevin insisted that his daughter could not hurt anyone, as she was an extremely kind-hearted soul. The investigators, who had gathered initial information, concentrated their efforts on clarifying the circumstances of the New Year's Eve party that Valerie had attended. They began by creating a chronology of her movements that night by questioning her friends. First, they contacted Dennis, then Anna, who reported that she had come to the party together with Valerie and Robert around 10:30 in the evening of the 31st of December 2002. The party proceeded typically: drinks, food, dancing, music. After Anna had drunk more than she should have, she asked Valerie to drive her home. Samuel Pueblo, known among friends as Sammy, a student at Fillmore School and classmate of Valerie's sister, Jessica, also asked to be driven home. The girl agreed, and the trio left the party around 1:30 in the morning, shortly after Valerie had called her mother and informed her about her plans. Although Anna was very drunk, she could remember that Valerie had dropped her off and driven away with Sammy. She told her that the girl intended to meet her ex-boyfriend, Isaac Flores, after dropping off Sammy and returning her car in the morning. On the morning of the 1st of January, Anna discovered that her car had not been returned to her house. The investigators immediately set themselves the goal of finding her black four-door Toyota Corolla, as it could contain crucial evidence. All local police departments were informed about the search. While the police searched for the car, the investigators visited Sammy to learn details about that night. Sammy confirmed that Valerie had driven him home and told them that he had not seen Valerie again after saying goodbye in front of his house. He added that Valerie had planned to meet with her ex-boyfriend, Isaac. As part of the investigation, the investigators questioned participants of the party where Valerie had been and looked at video recordings of the event. On one of the videos, Valerie could be seen happily spending time in the kitchen with friends. After questioning her friends, the investigators learned that Isaac was somewhat older than Valerie and that there had been some disagreements between them in the past. Since Valerie was supposed to meet with Isaac that evening and no one had seen her since, the investigators decided to put Isaac on the list of possible suspects. The investigations continued to find Anna's car and determine what circumstances had led to Valerie's disappearance. In the course of the investigation, the investigators gradually focused on determining Isaac Flores's whereabouts. But before they could establish his exact address, a call diverted their attention that changed the course of their work. On the 2nd of January 2003, Anna's car was found in the parking lot of a local market in the city of Fillmore. Signs of a tense situation were recognizable in the interior, which allowed the investigators' assumptions about the events of that night. In the car, they also found personal belongings of the young woman, which was secured as important evidence. When the investigators finally found out Isaac's address, they were surprised to learn that he lived only a few blocks away from where the car was found. It turned out that Sammy's house was also near this parking lot. The entire investigative efforts now concentrated on Isaac, hoping to find answers to many questions. During the interrogation, Isaac told them that Valerie had called him several times on the evening before her disappearance to wish him a happy new year and to tell him that she planned to visit him. According to Isaac, however, she never arrived at his place that night. Although the investigations confirmed that Valerie had indeed spoken with Isaac by phone before she left the party, they still doubted whether she had reached his home. If Isaac had actually been involved in the unpleasant incident, the investigators would have needed further evidence to confirm their suspicions. As a result, Isaac remained free but continued to be under observation as a key figure. At the beginning of the new year, on the 4th of January 2003, the specialists completed the analysis of the submitted evidence and transmitted their results to the investigators. The report illuminated key aspects connected to the location of the incident, which, as it turned out, was located at a different place, and the evidence was eliminated without trace in a concrete drainage system. Furthermore, saliva was found that was sent to a forensic laboratory for DNA analysis, but the assignment to a known DNA sample proved difficult. The investigation assumed that the DNA of a person named Isaac might be present on the evidence, but to confirm this theory, a sample of his DNA was required. the procurement of which was difficult without significant evidence. While the investigation continued, the police urgently needed additional information and offered a reward of $1,000 for anyone who could provide information on the Valerie case. Shortly thereafter, the investigators received a call from a witness that significantly advanced the investigation. A local resident reported that on the day of Valerie's discovery, he passed by together with his wife and noticed a young Latin American man who was standing next to an old van. The man, somewhat fuller than average, appeared suspicious to them while he stood at the roadside next to the open door of the vehicle. The investigators quickly organized a meeting of the witness with a police sketch artist to create a composite image of the observed person. As soon as the portrait was finished, it was distributed to all police stations in Fillmore and the surrounding areas. Public concern grew daily, as the thought that the perpetrator was still running free disturbed the citizens. Another day passed and the investigators received another tip. It came from a couple who left a bar in the early morning after a New Year's Eve party. They reported that when leaving the bar, they had noticed an unusual scene at Anna's black sedan that was parked near the market. Despite the early morning hours and the darkness, they could recognize a young man about 20 years old with a stocky figure next to the car. Particularly striking was the man's jacket, with a dark center and light, possibly gray sleeves. This description confirmed the investigators' suspicions, based on the statements of another witness, that they might have seen the same person. Although the jacket helped to narrow the circle of suspects, the name of this young man remained a mystery. Despite hours of efforts, the investigators could not determine his identity, and the incident with Valerie reached a dead end. When the investigators felt that the case had stalled, something happened that brought light into the darkness. On the 6th of January 2003, an investigator returned from vacation who had been absent during the initial investigation. He was given the latest information about the case, and the mention of Sammy reminded him of an earlier incident when he investigated his minor offense. According to the detective, Sammy went into another person's house at night and took some of their things. He kept part of it and threw the rest into a garbage bin in the back parking lot of St. Francis of Assisi Church. With the knowledge that criminals often repeat their actions, the investigators decided to check the same location. On the 8th of January 2003, the team arrived at the church and began searching for possible evidence that could be connected to Valerie's case and that the perpetrator might have left behind. In the garbage container and in the parking lot, female clothing items and accessories were found, including a pair of black elegant ladies' pants and an earring that was identical to Valerie's. Also found were shoe prints in 2 different sizes and cypress branches, similar to those that had been discovered earlier with other evidence. All found materials were sent for DNA analysis. Although initially suspicions fell on Isaac, more and more evidence pointed to possible involvement of Sammy in the incident. The next morning, the investigators came to Sammy's house to question him again. They hoped to obtain new information, but the young man only confirmed what was already known. This put the investigators in a difficult position, as Sammy continued to hesitate to reveal further information. Nevertheless, 3 weeks later, the results of the DNA analysis became known, which showed that the earring and clothing items found at the church belonged to Valerie. This gave the police reason for more serious measures against Sammy, including taking a DNA sample. At the time when the police already had enough evidence for a search warrant, they entered Sammy's house without problems. During the search, the investigators took fingerprints and DNA and asked Sammy for the shoes he had worn to the New Year's party. Surprisingly, he handed over his sneakers without objections. During the search of the house, the investigators discovered several secret places with personal items that revealed some unexpected sides of the owner. In the bedroom, they found hiding places with women's clothing and several mobile phones that turned out to belong to women from the community. They reported that the phones had disappeared from their bags and bedrooms during sleep. At one moment, the investigators led Sammy outside for an open conversation. They asked him about his relationship with Valerie. Were they close or just friends? Sammy categorically denied any romantic relationship. But when the investigators asked him whether it was possible that his DNA would be found on Valerie after they had accompanied another girlfriend home, he suddenly changed his statement. He confessed that after accompanying the other girlfriend, they had stopped in the parking lot of St. Francis of Assisi Church, where a tender moment occurred. The investigators' doubts arose after Sammy presented his version of the incident, in which he claimed that Valerie had planned to meet with her ex after dropping off the children. His narrative seemed unbelievable to them, and they decided to check his statements for their truth by continuing the conversation. In the course of the conversation, Sammy became visibly nervous, whereupon the investigators asked about his condition, and he answered that he was cold. An investigator went into the house and got a jacket from the coat rack that had a dark spot on the chest and light grey sleeves, exactly like that of the suspect. Red stains on the upper part of the jacket aroused additional suspicions, but to confirm the facts, the results of a DNA analysis were required, which was still waiting to come. In the meantime, confirmation came from the laboratory that Sammy's shoe prints matched those that were found with important pieces of evidence. This indicated his presence at the location of the incident, but this was not sufficient for bringing charges. After several months of waiting, the results of the DNA analysis finally confirmed that the saliva traces on the pieces of evidence belonged to Sammy. However, the decisive piece of evidence were the red stains on his jacket, which were attributed to Valerie. On the 3rd of June 2003, Sammy was arrested. The court hearing took place on the 9th of July 2004. The investigators claimed in their charges that Sammy might have committed an inappropriate act in the parking lot at the church, after which he hid physical evidence in a concrete drainage system. According to their account, Sammy began to pay her increased attention, but after her rejection, his behavior became concerning. Valerie tried to escape this situation, to leave the car and reach the church, but Sammy followed her and left traces on the ground. Eventually, an unpleasant incident occurred. Afterward, he collected clothing and other objects and left them in a container behind the church. Since his residence was not far away, he went home to get a vehicle to eliminate the traces and throw them into the concrete ditch. Exactly then, he was noticed by a couple that was returning from a celebration at a bar. Later, Sammy returned to the parking lot in front of the church, took Anna's car and left it standing in the market parking lot where he was seen by other witnesses. The trial against Sammy lasted about 1 month, and finally he was found guilty on the 2nd of August 2004 of a serious offense of the first degree and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of early release. This verdict brought Valerie's family and friends a certain relief, although it naturally changes nothing about what happened.